Hey, good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. On today's show, we're gonna have a conversation with one of our allies who has an incredible history from traveling the world and living in many different places, building hackathons, being featured on TV shows, and building some really cool stuff. But one of the things that we want to talk about here is on acquisition of e-commerce business. This guy's been involved with a lot of different e-commerce buy and sell side stuff. So we wanted to learn about that, and so we might as well ask some questions about that with Mr. Mark. Mark, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you for having me.
All right, so let's start with this. In your world of deal making, and you've been a part of a lot of different sides of the coin for e-commerce businesses, right? Like, how did you get your start? Let's get how did you get your start into into the e-commerce world?
Yeah, well, e-commerce was a natural extension for me from my childhood. Actually, back when I was growing up in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. So my father was a diplomat. He was posted there, but I happened to just have easy access to Pokemon cards from America. So I was able to flip them, and actually for a while, I think Pokemon card trading was banned because of my sales. But when I was out of college and actually a startup that a couple of friends and I had founded and received angel funding for, ran out of funding. I was kind of at a loss to what to do, but I really wanted to get into crowdfunding. And this is back in 2016. So the e-commerce landscape is changing almost year to year. Definitely the crowdfunding landscape has changed significantly. And I wouldn't advise crowdfunding today, a Kickstarter, Indiegogo, in the way that you were seeing things like the Pebble Watch. Those kinds of successes are not really as viable because you're going to get, for lack of a better word, ripped off by folks in Shenzhen who can iterate on it in under a month, right? And that's the amount of time that your campaign is going to take. That's the amount of time that your product's going to hit the street. So I think the most visible example of this, the most memorable one, was the Fidget Cube. Before the Fidget Cube campaign had ended, it had already been reproduced in a much lower quality, but that's not the point. They weren't first to market, and not only that, they were certainly not the cheapest. They were the best quality, but there were some issues there. So back then, I wanted to get into e-commerce crowdfunding. I was a big phone head, I guess you call it, big Android fanboy, big just tech enthusiast. And I wanted to create watch bands for the Apple Watch and Android Wear platform. So I showed it to my phone head friends. They loved it, did a crowdfunding campaign. And at the time, for a kid out of college, got a lot of money. I raised about 30K. And given the cost of materials and all that, so my special sauce was I was doing wooden watch bands for the Apple Watch and Android Wear. And that had not been done. I was first to market, and that's why my crowdfunding campaign was able to get off the ground. I was able to get PR a lot easier than I had other, because it was unique. It was unique and novel. And those ecosystems were not as saturated as they are today. If you were to look at the watch band category on Amazon, first off, it is a bounty for the customer. It is wonderful. But it is also extraordinarily saturated, very hard to break into, extremely low ASP. And you'd have to find some unique and novel way to approach the market that I think would be almost impossible at this point. Shenzhen, Dongguan, almost any factory city in China is going to be able to produce against any kind of material and any kind of variations and alterations. So at the time, it was a lot easier for me than it is today. But got 30,000. My margins were really good. So I was able to effectively double my crowdfunding order. And that meant I could take it back from China and launch a storefront on Amazon. So I hadn't had an FBA storefront up until that point. Maybe I'd been selling books or something, just on the side, trying to get rid of used items, but nothing serious, definitely nothing that could support someone full time. And so because I had that margin, and let's be clear, with that 30,000, I was able to go live in China for about 4 months. And so part of my background is I'm half Chinese. And I lived in China for about 9 years. And for 3 of those years, I was in Guangzhou. Guangzhou is in Guangdong province, which is where Shenzhen and Hong Kong and Dongguan are. Now, really, we care about Shenzhen and Dongguan, right? Those are the factory towns. Shenzhen's less of a factory town now, it used to be, but Dongguan is the factory town. Shenzhen is what a factory town becomes, which becomes more of like a sprawling market to connect buyers with agents and sometimes factories, but a lot of agents, even amongst Chinese people. But like I said, I had fantastic margins. I could double my production run. So I came back, found some novel applications of logistics in China to get the stuff back. I did e-packet and things like that. But the other piece was in being able to fulfill to my backers. Amazon FBA, FBA has this 3PL functionality. It's called multi-channel fulfillment. But basically, you just send them a spreadsheet. Of course, you must have your products barcoded, but you send them a spreadsheet and they ship out your product. And for a lot of crowdfunding backers up until that point, crowdfunding creators, I should say, they would do it by hand, right? They would say, okay, here I am mailing this stuff off, and I had 9 SKUs of 3 colors, 9 SKUs, 3 sizes, right? So the odds of me getting this wrong are way too high. And so there's just no, and plus I'm just not going to go to the mailroom, right, every day and package myself. I'd rather do it in bulk. So Amazon offered me that opportunity. It's a fantastic one. Very, very, very few businesses out there provide the scalability and accessibility that e-commerce, more specifically Shopify and Amazon, can provide. If you're going to be an accountant or a banker, in terms of scaling capital, scaling your income, yeah, you guess you could start an agency and hire other guys like you and manage them, but you're limited by the people, right? And their capacity. With Amazon, it's like, well, how much product can you get? And there's an infinite warehouse almost. I mean, it felt like it at the time. There's an infinite warehouse and infinite pickers and packers. There's a credit card fraud, all these things, right? A channel for marketing. So it was just, it was an opportunity that would not have been afforded to me had I been born like 10 years earlier. Just would not have been possible. And especially for a young kid, like out of college, like how are you gonna do that, right? You're gonna get your own warehouse? No, you can do all these things by hand, but then you'd run yourself ragged. So there was a lot of, I guess, a marriage of digital scalability with the physical realities of running a commerce-based business. But it just so happened that Amazon has all these digital interfaces that allow you to treat a warehouse as almost like a virtual machine, right? You're saying like, okay, I'd like it to have 2-day shipping and things like that. So I brought that stuff back, and I had this crowdfunding base, and I had a novel product and PR contacts from the campaigns earlier, and the campaign had just ended. And so it was very easy for me to transition to, okay, well, maybe you missed the crowdfunding campaign, but guess what? You and your friends, your relatives or anybody, like as a backer, right? Do you want to get some for your friends, for family? Do you want other colors or sizes? Come to Amazon, leave me a review. And then that helped me gain rank organically. Same thing with news articles and things like that. So I did that for about 2 years. I was not living rich, but as a guy out of college, I was kind of living the dream, right? Working from home back in 2016 until 2018, before a lot of people found out how great it was, right? Few years later. So after that, had some stuff with family. I moved up to Seattle and went to join Amazon. Very natural transition. I was onboarded as a category manager, a vendor manager. My category was professional dental, which is truly unique category out there. There are, what I would say is, there are very few industries that I know of. And that's the thing. I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know. But there are very few industries out there that are, shall we say, stuck in the past or stuck in their ways, which happen to be anti-consumer. And I'm using the term consumer loosely here. At Amazon, a philosophy I don't think we always upheld, but everybody was a customer. So I, as the vendor manager, am the customer of my in-stock manager, right? And I'm the customer of the people who created these internal tools, right? And this mentality of like, okay, sure, we sell stuff to people, but you are in turn responsible for all these other stakeholders, right? And so when I talk about the dental industry, specifically the distributors, Shine, Patterson, Benco, I mean, it's changing, right? But the way of doing business is just completely foreign to how e-commerce is done. There's no pricing transparency. So if you are, as a dentist, you want to go out and purchase, I guess I'm going to plug this because I thought it was so cool. It was called the Carry View, which I forget the brand. It's a well-known brand. They make the iTero machines. Gosh, I'm blanking on the name. Anyways, the Carry View is a spectacular device. You put it in your mouth and it provides almost like a black light or false negative of your teeth, but it shows the cavities. And to dentists, they don't call them cavities, they call them caries. Hence the term Carry View. It's not quite spelled that. CARIVUE. Really, the brand name is so well known. But how do you think somebody would purchase this, right? In an e-commerce setting, it's fairly straightforward. I go to Amazon.com, and if I want to buy a toothbrush, there's the price, and then I'll go and there's ads for other toothbrushes. I'll be recommended similar toothbrushes. I might be recommended toothpaste, right? Like it all makes sense. It's very consumer friendly. You can compare pricing. You know your shipping times. There's reviews. That's so fundamental. There's reviews, photos from customers. There's a lot of trust signals. So when we talk about trust signals in e-commerce, there's varying degrees of trust signals, some of which are harder to fake. And as time goes by, certain trust signals become effectively moot, right? Like, so for the longest time, professional stock photography back in the 2000s was a mark on your website that you had money and therefore could be trusted, right? But then the proliferation of stock photo websites meant that every website could have stock photography. So now this trust signal is gone because it's $10. So what we saw was this move towards, I forget what the style is called, but corporate minimalism? I don't know. It's the style you see today from Grubhub to Google. People are rendered as shapeless, inoffensive blobs, right? They're blue, they're very rounded, very inoffensive, but more importantly, a graphic designer created these. And that is another trust signal. The trust signal is someone with an eye for design, for things like the golden ratio and how things are formatted and placed together, created this graphic. And this graphic is specific to our business. Therefore, we have money. You can trust us. Other trust signals on Amazon, the ones you're going to encounter more often, right? You'll see reviews. Those are being threatened, you could say, right? People have complained. There are news articles which have spoken to the fact that in the past, sellers have purchased reviews. In the past, people have left negative reviews they're confused. They're leaving a review for Amazon's delivery promise and not actually the product. It's, oh, this arrived 2 days late. I get that. It's not related to this product. But back to the Carry View and what I saw in at this dental conference, right? Think about the way in which you buy things today, even the things you buy in store, right? You have a very clear picture of how that's supposed to go. And anything that departs from that is a little suspicious. You go buy a car, right? And that's changing, right? Certain things, certain startups like Carvana and the like make price transparency. They have, Carvana has a spectacular like 360 camera department. So they have an SOP. They wheel the car in to a garage, and then it's a 360 taking photos. They open the doors, and so you can take your inspection without actually having to go and physically see the car. So like I said, there's very few things in our own personal lives where we're going to encounter things that depart from the norm. I think everybody prefers basically, I think everybody prefers the Amazon.com shopping experience, right? You go to a hospital, you don't know what you're going to pay, right? You think your insurance has got your back, but let's say you didn't have insurance. Try to navigate that world, right? Of trying to, well, how much is this procedure going to cost me, right? And they'll give you like an estimate, and it'll be all sorts of opacity. But in that room, I was at a dental conference. It was like young millennial dentist something. It was down in Las Vegas. But I mean, I learned a couple of things about dentistry. But a salesman comes out and he talks about the care review. He has, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. I forget. And at the end, he's like, "Okay, carny salesman like, right? Just like a carny salesman, just like you're selling timeshares or I don't know, just any high pressure sales tactic. Okay, now how about all this for $3,000, right? Okay, but what if you got two, and it's like, but only in this room right now, I cannot offer you this deal. There is no price transparency, right? You are in a conference room. This deal that the sales rep is offering you, he could offer everybody, right? And I mean, the other clue is you look at the photos of these sales reps' kids. They're very expensive kids, right? You look at the family photos, it's like, okay, this guy's clearly living an upper middle class life, right? So the sales reps are making fat commissions. The premise though is that, well, dentists make a lot of money, so it's fine to upcharge and engage in these kinds of tactics. But the dental industry is just so very different and is in desperate need of disruption. Amazon is providing that. Dental service organizations are providing that. So DSOs are effectively, they're buying clubs is the best way to put them. I mean, they're obviously very formal buying clubs, but they provide reduced pricing for their members. And the only reason that exists is because of Henry Schein, Patterson, and Benco, who collectively have, I don't know, close to 80% market share, right? 3 operators have like close to 80%. That's going to distort a market, right? Henry Schein, all of them, but Henry Schein, most of them all, I believe, has settled lawsuits in every single state, and it continues to settle lawsuits. I don't think it loses them, but it does settle them, and it's around things like price fixing and things like that. So remember, they've settled them, right? But there's a pattern there, right? Where maybe they're pushing it. At the very least, the plaintiffs are groups with legitimacy, right? Like the Dental Association of Colorado or whatever. But just going back to the example, it's like, it was nuts. I remember thinking in the room, I was like, what? How do you guys tolerate? You let a used car salesman come into your living room? Like, are you serious? Like, you like this? Part of it is they're going off of, they're trading off of expertise, off of credentials, right? So they'll be like, oh, famous dentist, approves of this, right? Or this association or these papers and things like that. But again, you go back to this point of like, wait, this is how you buy stuff? A used car salesman tells you about what to do. Right? Like you're not shopping right. They can't. If you go to henryschein.com, you go to patterson.com, benco.com, no prices are available, right? You log into your portal and then you find out what prices are assigned to you. And it could be that the prices you're getting are different from the dental office next door. There's a lot of varying things there, but man, I got it. It's just, the dental industry is so different. Same to education, right? In terms of procurement. When you think about how they do procurement for the education industry, yeah, there's their purchasing cycles, which are of course tied to school seasons. But in terms of how they go about buying things, they're like, well, we love our physical catalogs. So, any kind of e-commerce player should come prepared to give physical catalog, because that's kind of where the customer is right now. Like I said, I have a background in medical. That's professional medical. That's it's less, shall we say, severe or warped as what I saw in dental. Dental was truly like the strangest ecosystem I've ever seen, and I hope that changes, because I'm not saying they're taking advantage of dentists, but this is part of the reason why perhaps dental services aren't as cheap as they could be, is the presence of distributors who make dentists' lives easier, and they pay for that convenience in money. The dental industry operators do a lot of cool things for their dentists, but if you pencil it out, the math doesn't quite work. But one of the things is your rep comes out and they restock your shelves. Oh, it's like having an extra employee, I guess, right? I mean, the margin that they're making, the commission that they're making is allowing for this. But if you think about it, I'd much rather own a business where my office admin is just going on a website and they're just filling their cart with the stuff that we always buy, and they can shop around. Not so with the distributors. This is changing. A lot of millennial dentists started saying no, I'm not doing this. Right? I'm going net 32. I'm going to go to Amazon. I'm going to go to my DSO. I'm going to join a DSO to get that purchasing power. But yeah, I mean, we kind of got on this trust signal tangent. But yeah, no, the dental industry is a fascinating beast. Gosh, I'm not sure how I got started on that. I guess I started talking about, I started as a vendor manager in professional dental. Yeah. So I did that for about a year. And just 1 year, and you realize it's how strange the industry is. The transition to corporate dentistry is another thing that's unfortunate. You're probably going to read about that. The articles come out already, but there's this sense of trying to meet quota, of pitching services, people still think of their dentist as a doctor, in the sense of somebody who is there for their benefit, who is there looking after their interests, first do no harm. They're not thinking of this guy as a car mechanic who maybe wants to throw in a couple of things to get a little extra, get some money on the side. I'm not saying the doctors don't do that too, but there's more of a push for that on the dental side, to be like, hey, what about that? What about whitening? What about, orthodontia? Well, we could do this, we could do that. Just more of a quota numbers push, which moves away from treating, right? It moves away from treating people to selling to customers, right? So that's at least what I'm seeing in the dental industry. Medical's not so much. But yeah, I did dental for about a year with Amazon, and you can get dental products on Amazon.com. Some are not available to you. They're available with prescription only, meaning you must have a dental license, or you must be affiliated with a business that some of this stuff you should not have, right? You should not be allowed to buy it. Some of the other things are just it's just regulatory. It's okay, this is a screw, right? This is literally a screw, and this screw goes in your teeth. It's just a screw, but technically you need a dental license to purchase it. But it is absolutely just if you were to show it to you, this is a screw, right? Okay, well, this is a special screw then. But yeah, I did that for about a year, and then 2 years. So in 2019, I joined Professional Medical. And I'm in Professional Medical for 2 years. And for about a year, Professional Medical is standard, right? At least for professional healthcare. Professional healthcare is relatively new to Amazon. And then 2020 comes along. And I can't go into too much detail, but there are a lot of regrets from that time. One of them was not putting two and two together, and being like, wait a minute. Well, if China's buying up Chinese customers, right? Not the Chinese government, but Chinese customers, like folks in Hong Kong, if they're buying up all this PPE, and we weren't even using the term PPE, we were we call them masks and gloves. That wasn't a thing. We were just like, man, this COVID thing, huh? Because you remember SARS, right? We had all these scares, but we were there and we were like, oh man, we're going out of stock. It's like, well, we got to get the Chinese customers what they need. And I wish I had gone back. Wait, stop. Wait a minute, stop. Hold on a second. Let's focus. What if we're going to need this? That wasn't really a thing. Everybody got, if you recall, everybody got caught flat-footed. Maybe there was a business or two, a distributor or two, that they were like, oh yeah, we saw this, right? We've got the gowns, we've got the nitro gloves, if they were, then they must have charged a premium and made healthy profits. It would have been the traditional stalwarts like Granger and McKesson and whatnot. But I feel like everybody got caught flat-footed. Everybody's like, wait a minute, our historical forecasting models have never seen this. Are you sure? It's like, yeah, people are buying this. And then, right. And it turned out like we needed a lot more than what the models would ever predicted, right? Like the models were never built for this. They were never built for the exponential growth of a virus, right? They were never built for that. That's effectively what we were saying. A exponential growth in demand for PPE sort of mirrored the demand for COVID. And actually, in retrospect, I wish I'd looked at it. It would have been cool to see the data on state by state while I was at Amazon. I mean, it would have probably matched what we knew, which is like, okay, this is where COVID testing is high. Okay, that's where the PPE is being sold. That was a very unique time. We transitioned at Amazon from, your traditional corporate, kind of boring P&L management, negotiating with vendors, talking about margin, selection, to all hands on deck. Your jobs have changed overnight. You are now being asked to procure as much PPE as you can in this almost startup-like environment, right? We were also working from home at that point. And if you recall, Seattle was ground zero. That was where the nursing home outbreak occurred. Now, was that where COVID first landed? No, but that was like the first instance publicly in the news. But that's where COVID first showed up in America. First tested and reported was in a Seattle nursing home. And so Amazon shut down real quick because somebody at Amazon got it. And then the next day we were closed. So, I mean, we were just, working from home, but we were all working from home, but engaged in what was effectively a charitable endeavor. Amazon was going to sell PPE at cost to a whitelisted group of customers. So that was hospitals, NGOs, charities, anybody that would make sense, to provide PPE to, other than, some guy on the street, sorry, but like, hey, doctors need this, right? And that was in contrast to some of the other players in the space. These players had been like medical distributors previously. They sold at a profit. Okay. Well, Amazon didn't. And it's weird that it wasn't covered in more detail. I'm not saying that I'm an Amazon fanboy. I was like, oh, weird. Amazon could have made a profit. They chose to, but they chose to sell at cost. And they did that for some time. It's called the Amazon COVID supply store or something. I forget. It's no longer available, I don't think. Certainly not at cost. But we did that for quite some time, for a long time, actually. And that was just some wild times because there were a lot of charlatans, right? A lot of people just coming out of the woodwork just telling you, hey, I got a warehouse full of N95, and they do. Okay, but does it? Okay, now we got to go through the list, right? Now we got to start asking, okay, where is the certificate? Tell me the provenance. I need to know, all these things. But there are other times where it's like, there is no time. This reputable source, we've known to be reputable for some time. They have nitrile gloves. They just unloaded them on the dock in California. And you are a potential customer because right? I mean, I was among many folks who could buy, but I'm a potential customer because Amazon can instantly give you money, right? Like of course they can find a higher bidder, right? There's absolutely, but the time, the convenience, the risk, it's just like, no, if Amazon says they're going to pay you for it, the truck's going to be right there. Money's in your pocket 90 days from now, maybe 120 sometime from now, some very bad payment terms, some long payment terms, should I put it that way? So, it's a very, very cool part of my life. And then part of that, I won't go into too much detail, but because I was in professional medical, in contrast to some of my peers, in part of this, the organization I was in was called BIS, Business Industrial Scientific Supplies. It is a part of, it's a publicly known part of Amazon. It's just a lesser traveled one. Everybody knows about wireless, right? Toys. Business Industrial Scientific Supplies is boring, right? It's screws, right? It's fasteners. It's aerospace grade lubricant that costs like $5,000 for like a tube this size. It is Amazon's vision of the everything store. Not personified, but what if you could buy everything? And when I say everything, I mean the nuts and bolts that go into a Boeing 747. Or how about the ones that go into the hangar when you put the hangar, like, what about that? That's the everything store where you can buy everything. Everything. So BIS, had all these other folks who did not have a professional medical background, but I, along with some colleagues, were tasked with working with some medical manufacturers on DME and CME, durable medical equipment, capital medical equipment. And that was stuff like ventilators, anesthesia machines, because anesthesia machines can be repurposed as ventilators. A couple other things too, but it was just all hands on deck. Like, we need anything, right? Because America was desperate. There were just so many shortages everywhere. And then we went back to business as usual, right? Things wound down, and the crisis passed. At least the PPE crisis passed. And if you recall, I mean, we look back, those waves, there was a time where we kind of thought, great, we're in the lull and vaccines are coming and everything's going to be back to normal. Well, here we are in the Omicron wave, right? So things didn't quite pan out that way. Anyways, I'd had my fill of corporate life, like, just things went back to normal after I went through almost a life-changing event. And I thought, it's time to go back to my roots. And so I didn't want to be a seller off the bat, because I really started to enjoy the security of a stable job and a monthly, weekly, biweekly paycheck. So I went and joined a consulting firm in e-commerce, The Stable. And they they do a lot. They actually just got acquired by Accenture. And that's actually been happening a lot. There's been a lot of consolidation in the agency space, which I would have expected a year ago when money was cheaper. I'm not sure what's driving it now, but I guess, rates aren't that high. And it's still easier than I would have thought to get money to go acquire things. But either way, The Stable does e-commerce, whether that be Target, Walmart, or predominantly Amazon. And so there I advised both sellers and vendors on their e-commerce presence. I was then recruited by the founders of Razor Group, an e-commerce aggregator, and they wanted me to come aboard as a senior brand manager and give me what I was dreaming about, which is my own P&L, except it was on someone else's dime. That's the key, right? Like, I get to run my own brand, get to run my baby, do all these cool things. And if it doesn't work out, well, I'm not losing the shirt off my back. So there are a lot of things I learned in my time there from scaling. It's a startup too, hypergrowth startup. You're going to encounter hypergrowth problems. And then very, very recently, last month, the OnePlus reached out to me, the smartphone company, and wanted me to manage their Amazon presence in the United States. And so today, of all days, is the launch day of the OnePlus 10T. So check it out. It's a mid-range phone, predominantly for gamers and anybody who wants. It's actually the fastest charging phone in the world right now. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's like 0 to 100% in 20 minutes. Yes, it is. It's 20 minutes. Yeah. In the EU, it's 19, because we are only allowed to go to 125 watts in America. In the EU, we can go to 150, or other parts of the world we can go to 150. Maybe not the EU. I can't. But the point is that 25 watt delta, it's a minute, which is not that big a deal, right? Still pretty fast charge. You go from 19 minutes to 20. That's still pretty damn fast. So yeah, that's the 10T that just came out. I've only been there a month, so I really haven't had a chance to. We just came off Prime Day too. I joined the day before Prime Day. There's just a lot of things going on, but I'm now settling into this role and trying to figure out the strategy moving forward for their brand and their presence on Amazon and their retail relationship with Amazon. So that's kind of my background in a nutshell. I kind of took a tangent there on professional dental medical. It's just such a fascinating world. You don't get to see behind the curtain. You don't get to go and see the teacher's lounge, right? It's always a jarring experience to see these people as people other than a teacher, right? As adults, as people, right? So to be able to get that peek behind the curtain in dental and medical, and then a little bit of education too, was fascinating. Still ripe for disruption. They're being disrupted, especially dental, but there's still opportunity. Absolutely. That's where I am.
Let's do this. So with your background and the things that you shared about, from starting one an Amazon business, started in crowdfunding, which is super interesting. I never thought of it this way. With crowdfunding today, Indiegogo and those kind of things, by the time your product launches, it's being potentially ripped off by another,
Mhm.
company could go to the market a lot faster. So super interesting of how an industry disruptor has come in and evolved very quickly. But you
Mhm.
really got in at a very opportune time and built your own brand,
Yes.
then got to work
Mhm.
with, Amazon, and you got to see massive disruption in the world, through COVID and big companies' response to it, but also the opportunities and all these things. So you've seen a lot. Let me ask this question: for e-commerce investors, you've been an aggregator and you've worked in acquisitions of these groups. For industries that are ready for disruption, for investors, for deal makers, what are some things, and we've got a few minutes left, what are some things that you would look for in a disruptive industry? Where can we benefit in, from an industry that needs massive disruption like that in the world of e-commerce?
Yeah, the time I spent at Amazon, so I was at Amazon for 3 years, but it was a very formative experience for me. It was the very first corporate job that I really had, and it was a job that afforded me a lot of responsibility and pressure too. And a lot of companies have a culture that they put on a whiteboard, or not a whiteboard, but they put on a notice board. Some of the values that Amazon espouses, I felt, and one more keenly than any other was customer obsession. And I know this is going to seem kind of obvious, but industries that are ripe for disruption in my mind are ones where the customer experience is just poor. It's just worse than what you'd expect to see in your normal life. And so when we were talking to dental industry operators, even other dentists, there was a point in time in your life when maybe you wouldn't have bought clothes online, right? I'm definitely not going to buy a car online today. I'm not comfortable. Like, a car on Amazon, maybe you can buy it from Carvana. But they've approached the problem in a different way, and I think they've addressed the customer pain points better than Amazon is doing right now. I think you can buy a car on Amazon, but not in the way that Carvana does it, which is like, nope, this is all we do, and because we're specialized, we're addressing everything you can think of that you could address in an e-commerce setting. But there was a time when you wouldn't have bought clothes, right? You had to earn that trust over time, but also feature sets and pain points had to be addressed too. But when I'm thinking about industries that are ripe for disruption, any of them, and it's so trivial. Oh, just find the pain points, right? But think about any of them where the customer experience is just poor. It's like, why are these people putting up with it? And in a lot of cases, it's because they don't have any other choice. The industry is too small, so it's been captured by one or two companies which have the scale to provide whatever solution it is. But a lot of them have been disrupted, right? Like, traditionally, if you were talking about inspecting electric windmills or electric turbines, it was a guy, right? I wouldn't say there were monopolies or anything like that, but there was a pretty heavy cost associated with sending a guy up, right? Now it's drones. And given the cost of drones, it's the barrier to entry is a lot lower, but also the pain points you're addressing you're addressing the pain points a lot better, right? Because you can program the drone; it flies around on a set loop. It can go on a consistent interval, and provide even more data. Obviously, it's not there with its hands, right, doing something. But that's an industry where it's like, oh, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that a guy goes up a tower by hand and takes photos when we have like miniature robotic helicopters that cost like $200? Like, really? Like, the cost has gone down over time, but there's still a lot of industries out there which are old school, and not even necessarily in America, right? Like, there are industries around the world which are in different states of maturation. They may not necessarily be using some of the standards and practices we encounter here in America, and vice versa, right? The way in which healthcare is billed and charged for in America is very confusing. That's a really big pain point. So certain startups have risen up. GoodRx, Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drug, Very transparent pricing. It's just, it's 15% margin, but more importantly, it's the pricing up front. Again, like a lot of industries need transparency. That's the first. Pricing transparency, huge. Whenever you don't see pricing transparency, in my mind, there's an opportunity for disruption. Because usually the reason they're not telling you the price is because the customer base is small enough that and the supply is small enough that they don't have a lot of choices, and you can get them in there with a salesman. Once an industry becomes large enough, a category becomes large enough, then you have no choice but to actually disclose your prices, because the other guy is disclosing his. And just nobody likes that experience, right? Think about times in your life where you've probably had to push through a web page or a web shopping experience where they were not telling you the price, where it's like, oh, no, leave us your email and we'll give you a quote. We'll come back and follow. You just know this is not going to be a good time, right? You just don't want to do it. Versus SaaSes, which are just like, no, here are pricing tiers. And yeah, there's a tier at the end, which is call us, but most of the time, I'm going to try you out at the price points I know. So yeah, customer obsession. I mean, really think about, interviewing customers that, oh, this is old, pretty straightforward, but I would think about the industries that you interact with on a daily basis, but also just understanding how they do business. Because you might find out that what they're doing is completely nonsensical. Truck booking freight for the longest time was bizarre. It still is. Freight for trucks, freight for cargo ships. 2 startups came up to deal with that. There are 2 startups that are big in this space because of how they approach the convoy for trucks, for freight routing, right? Uber does it too. Convoy for trucks, and then FreightOS. There's another one like FreightOS, but for booking ocean freight. At least for FreightOS, ocean freight, it was such a terrible industry. You'd go through a freight agent and they will get you a good deal, but the pricing transparency is not there, right? You cannot just simply, I have 1,000 cubic meters of X, and I want to take it from this port to this port. How much is that going to cost me? You got to call a guy or you email. No, FreightOS is like, no, you just pop it in and they'll give you a rough estimate. The salesman will reach out to you. But the point is that they've addressed one of the pain points, which is like, they've addressed a really big piece of friction, which is like, why am I here waiting for you to tell me something you could probably tell me up front, right? Why can't you just tell me I'm going to go somewhere else? So FreightOS Convoy, that's the biggest thing is customer set. Everything Amazon has done. Amazon does a lot of things, but when they focused on customer experience, they get money. Every single time every single time, I've been internal to and I've seen what they've been working on, or even externally and outside looking in. Sure, that's the piece. That's key. Amazon does not compete on price, right? Amazon's prices will be the same as Target and Walmart. They want to compete on the customer experience. It's a losing battle. If you're fighting a price, right? If you're competing on price, and the other guy is too, where are you going to end up? With no margins. So you're better off differentiating yourself with all these other costs you can control. That being, the 2-day delivery promise, all these other things, right? So I've really seen just this customer experience piece is just being so fundamentally key. Chewy, in my opinion, is eating Amazon's lunch. Now, their customer experience is hard to replicate, but if your dog dies, they'll send, a rep will send you a painting of your dog, right? That's not going to happen at Amazon. It's a nice customer experience. And I don't know if that's really changing any friction or stuff like that, but everything related to customer experience. In my time in e-commerce, I've been really surprised by how being nice to people just pays off in sales. Just being nice and upfront and friendly. And I thought I was going to get ripped off, like offering returns and stuff. Every return is a thief, right? In my door, it's, he definitely got that package, right? He's not claiming. No. You give him the return. It's like, what is this out of your P&L? It's not that much. And if it's okay, it's like probably 2-5%. But you treat people in this way, and you do get returns. You get positive reviews. Just to focus on the customer. It just sounds so simple, and yet I don't know. Not every company does that. I mean, you can focus on the customer, and then once you capture the customer, sure, you can do whatever you want. But to get there first, you got to focus on the customer. So that's what I've seen in e-commerce, customer
So
focus.
you have you have shared a crazy amount of information and golden nuggets in the e-commerce world and some of the experiences that you've had. Let's do this. We are completely out of time. For people who want to connect and maybe have a conversation with you about the history of e-commerce, or maybe even take a
Mhm.
look at their specific business or product that they're trying to do on e-commerce, what's a good place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, well, look me up on LinkedIn and reach out. I greatly enjoy. I mean, I view some e-commerce problems as puzzles, so to speak. So I'm certainly very interested if fiendish challenges, it's certainly within Amazon. From a technical perspective, I know quite a bit about how things work. I was exposed to that in great detail because of my time with COVID. It's just the way it was. We had to learn these systems and how they really work. But yeah, if folks have just general questions about e-commerce or more technical and obscure and specific issues related to Amazon, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to help. Not really looking to do consulting per se, but I think if there's a project that comes along, it would make sense. More often than not, I think if you have a question for me that it's just I can answer in a sentence or two, I'm more than happy to answer that. So
Sounds good. All right, Mark. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. Fellow deal makers in the audience, hope you learned a lot. And if you have some topics or something that you'd like to run by Mark, his contact information will be in the show notes below, so you could click on that, connect directly with him. Now, if you have a deal or a deal type that you'd like to talk about here on the Deal Scout, head on over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, maybe get you on the next show. Till then, have a great day. Talk to you on the next episode.